Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Hey, where you been? Buckeye Talk is about to begin. Hey, come on in.
Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means, that's Stefan Krajisnik, and that is Andrew Gillis, and this is your game preview pod for Ohio State's game against Illinois on Saturday in Champaign. It's Memorial Stadium. There's a lot of Memorial Stadiums out there. We got to diversify the names a little bit. Fun fact, there are 3 teams in the Big Ten that Ryan Day has yet to face as a head coach. Illinois is one of them. Andrew, can you name the other 2?
No. Off the top of my head, I can't.
I think I can.
Go ahead.
Stefan, take the field.
Is it the 2 schools in LA?
It is the 2 schools in LA. It is, Andrew, you not knowing that. Shame on you. Ohio State was supposed to play Illinois back in 2020, but the game got canceled because the Buckeyes had a COVID outbreak, which was great for me because I had just pulled up to my hotel in Champaign when that game got announced that it was canceled. So I made a 4-hour drive for absolutely no reason. They'll play UCLA later on this season, and then they'll play USC. I think next year, I believe, they play USC. So I've checked all these off in the next 12 months here. But Illinois is the only original Big Ten team that they have yet to play this year. Game preview pod, 2 questions. Question number 1, Stefan, as we've done for the last couple of weeks here, what does a loss look like for Ohio State? And how much of it is about what Illinois can do to Ohio State versus Ohio State having another Nebraska situation where they're playing a team that Indiana blew its doors off against, and then Ohio State maybe doesn't come to play the way they should?
So I alluded to this a little bit earlier this week. It might have been before we started recording a pod, that I think I've pivoted on how a team beats Ohio State, because I no longer think that just controlling time of possession and trying to, run clock and keep Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith on the bench is a good strategy if you want to seriously win. If you want to keep the score close and maybe be like in a situation where Indiana was in last year, where it's, hey, if you can keep it respectable, you're going to make the playoff, and it doesn't matter what the actual result, win or lose, is. I think Illinois has to be, if it wants to win, has to try to be explosive, has to take shots down the field, has to run its offense, maybe run some tempo. Like, we haven't seen teams run a lot of tempo against this defense. Try to wear out guys like Caden McDonald and Edric Houston and Tywan Malone and Will Smith Jr. there in the middle. Like, that strategy opens up the door to you getting your doors blown off, right? Like playing fast could also result in quick, 30-second possessions that you go 3 and out, and all of a sudden your defense is back on the field, and Jeremiah Smith is now catching a 40-yard touchdown, and it went from 7-0 to 28-0 in a snap of a finger. But if you're going to lose anyways, what's it matter how it looks, right? And sure, maybe Illinois is in that conversation where keeping it close could go a long way for them if they're 10-2 and somehow in the playoff race. I don't think this Illinois team gets in at 10-2, because I think Indiana at worst is looking at 10-2, and they have that head-to-head. So I think that Illinois already got that disadvantage going for them. So I think Illinois has to come out aggressive, throw the ball deep. They've actually got some decent receivers. His name is slipping my mind. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Betty. You're muted, Steven.
Hank Betty.
Betty. He's a real weapon. Like Ohio or Illinois got some weapons on the outside to maybe try to test Ohio State secondary. Now, do I think it will work? Do I think Illinois will win? No, and I'll dive into that later as we do our predictions. But I just think if you're Illinois or Indiana or Oregon, teams that might see Ohio State down the road, and obviously teams in the playoff, like where winning and losing is the actual goal, I think you got to be aggressive. I think you got to take shots. I think you got to try to punch Ohio State in the face, because I just don't think. Sure, does a 7-minute drive keep Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith on the bench? Yeah. But what's it matter when that drive ends in 3 points anyways, because of what this defense does in the red zone, because of how good this defense is. If you're trying to be methodical and have a long drive, you need like 12 of 17 plays to go successful against Ohio State's defense. And I don't count on that. I wouldn't bank on that. I think the best way to score on this defense is to take some shots, see what happens. If it works out poorly, guess what? It was probably going to work out poorly anyways. So if Illinois wants to beat Ohio State, Illinois has to come out aggressive. I think that's the only way you beat this team. Because if you can make some explosives and make Ohio State uncomfortable, that's when maybe Julian Sayin throws a pick, or Ohio State feels like it needs to respond on offense and tries to do a bit too much on that side of the ball. Like, Ohio State still has to make mistakes, right? Ohio State has to be the self to some extent. But if you're aggressive, Ohio State has to worry about that, as opposed to Julian Sayin getting the ball back, being like, "Congrats, Minnesota! You just went up 3-0 after having one of the more successful drives against this defense all season."
Hank Betty should be on everybody's midseason All-American ballot in the all-purpose spot, because he is the epitome of I will score on you any way possible. He's got 32 catches for 569 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's thrown a 3-yard pass. He has a 25-yard rushing touchdown. He has a punt return for a touchdown. He's 5th in the country at 127.3 total yards per game. That is what all-purpose looks like, Andrew. That's getting it done, man. That's ball. That's real ball.
He's balling.
That's ball.
He's balling.
I think if he's got to do all that on Saturday, though. Like, I think he's got to score a multitude of ways, because to Stefan's point, if you have like the opening drive that Minnesota had, where you go 75 yards or you go 68 yards and it ends in a field goal, it's like, hooray, you're up 3-0. Cool, Matt Patricia now knows what you are going to do. You are off your script, and now they're going to kill you offensively. I don't know, Andrew. Like, here's my question to you. Can this be considered a trap game?
No, I don't think so, because
if they weren't ranked, could you consider it a trap game?
Maybe, because that was what I was thinking. I was like, Illinois is ranked. They do have a quarterback who's thrown 12 touchdowns and no picks this year. Like, they're not hideous, and I know they did get curb stomped by Illinois a few weeks ago. So like, there is that in a lot of people's minds of like, man, Indiana scored 800 bajillion points on these guys. What's Ohio State going to do? Wow. Like, Fernando Mendoza, if he can do that with that group of receivers, what's Julian Sayin going to do with Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate? Like, so I think maybe, look, I'm not going to predict this game to be 63-10. I'll put it like that. I don't think we're in for that. But I think Ohio State is not in a position to where you're like falling trap to anything. If the Penn State game was next week, and I know Penn State's down on their luck right now and they're kind of in a world of pain, if that was the following week, maybe, because teams are, not even just because, Penn State's great. It's, hey, I can't wait to get back onto the field against Jim Knowles, and, this defense can't wait to, shut out Penn State's offense and show that they're better without Knowles, and Ohio State's offense wants to score. Like, if there was the motivation factor a week later, if you had a big home game and you knew it was a big game and you get to bury Penn State, it's like Oregon dug the grave and put them in, and now you get to put the dirt on top of it. Like, if that was the motivating factor, maybe. But like, they play Wisconsin next week, so it's like you're not really looking forward to anything. This is the last, kind of stretch here that you're going to play in October. You played Minnesota, who wasn't that great. Illinois is the best team you're going to play this month, so I don't think it qualifies. I think maybe if Wisconsin was good, it would be a trap game. Maybe if Illinois was unranked and we didn't really kind of have this whole preseason buildup for them, it could be a trap game. But they're just too advanced, and Ohio State's not really falling into a trap for anything.
Is it a good game with trap game tendencies, Stefan?
Yeah, maybe that's a better way to describe it. I think Ryan Day is terrified of this being a trap game, and he's making sure that this isn't a trap game. He did the throw out the Indiana film thing again on his radio show Thursday. I've come to the conclusion that I don't think that's honest. I think he 100% watched the Indiana film because I just might have mentioned this on lying. I might have mentioned this on Wednesday's live show that like Ryan Day is not skipping 60 minutes worth of film because someone got blown out. I think he's saying you throw out the film because psychologically you don't want your players to think that this is a team that loses by 53 points to Big Ten teams. Like I think this is Ryan Day saying throw out the film in a sense of we think this team is good even if they lost the game by 53. And I think this is a game that the reason I also wouldn't say it's a trap game, I think this is a game that's kind of been circled on Ohio State's schedule for a little bit now. Like obviously the trip to Washington was circled in the sense that it was the first true road game, but I think this has always been circled as like it's going to be their first real like major test post Texas because this was a team in the preseason that was getting hype and was ranked. So I think Ohio State for a while has probably talked about this game as a big game. I mean, you got to talk about your trophy games, right? Like it's a big thing every year. You win your trophy games. And this is the only trophy game on Ohio State's schedule. There is no trophy outside of, gold pants, if you want to call that a trophy, for beating Michigan. This is a trophy game. You got to show up for it. I think Ryan Day in May was saying, hey, have you guys seen the Illybuck? Illybuck 11, I think is what we're on now. Have you guys seen the Illybuck? If you don't if that means nothing to you, then spring portal window just opened. Get the hell out of here.
I think that's more psychopathic than him saying to throw out the Indiana tape. Seriously, I was. They have not played Illinois since 2017. I don't think the Illybuck should exist anymore. I think it served its purpose. But these two teams don't play each other every year anymore.
What if we brought back a live turtle?
Then I'm open because then you could name them all.
Yeah, I think that there would probably be some organizations that wouldn't be too thrilled with that, but it's something to consider.
Yeah, I will say, it'll be okay. They'll get over it.
Should every Maryland game, if you beat Maryland, you get to take their mascot. Like the guy dressed up as a terrapin, you have to take him to Columbus if you beat him.
I mean, you're just trying to make it the Army-Navy like prisoner capture thing. Or, like, they do the prisoner exchange before every game?
I think that would
trying
be
to do it that where it's like you beat Maryland, you get a turtle, and then like the next time you play Maryland, you have to like do the ceremony where it's like we have the visiting team in white, the home team in red, and then just like Julian Sand hands over like a turtle to like Maryland's captain. Is that what you're asking for?
No, I'm saying he's saying that they should kidnap mascots every year.
No, listen, I think hear me out. Columbus would be pretty sick if Dubs, the Husky from Washington, was in Columbus right now. That's a good boy. Yeah, that's a good boy. You bring him back. Now, having a man dressed up as a turtle just sitting in your facility for, I guess it would be more than 12 months because you don't play Maryland every year now. Like 2 years of this guy just sitting at the Woody would be maybe a little bit of a problem. But
we walk in there, he's just sitting in the lobby like, hey.
Especially for some of these lower level teams, it's just like, hey, by the way, I know you were in College Park. You're just going to live here for the rest of your life now.
Well, okay. I think there's a way around this, though. Let's bring it back down to earth because now
I think the Terrapin could learn some things from Brutus. If Brutus is the best, it could be like a mentorship. Oh my god!
I think what if you don't have to take the person in the mascot, but you just take the mascot. So Ohio State and Michigan actually do play each other every single year. Ohio State loses, they just don't have Brutus for a year. Because the costume is locked up in Ann Arbor.
That's not fair, but Michigan doesn't have a mascot.
Well, I know, which is another problem. Why don't you have a mascot? It's 2025. Get a mascot.
Winner gets Connor Stallions.
Oh, my God.
I don't think Ryan Day wants Connor Stallions. That's the problem. That's the issue. I don't know. Well, okay, then Oklahoma has a mascot, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it a horse?
Yeah.
Okay. No, like not the real living thing, like an actual person.
They have.
Okay, cool. Because we're not sending Bevo over to Oklahoma if they lose.
Would be pretty sick.
I'm saying Red River Rivalry, an extra layer to that is the mascot doesn't exist for the school if they lose because it's locked up at the other team's facility. So you just don't have a mascot for a year. I think that would be fun. And you're not kidnapping people the way Stefan wants to. You like how I spun that narrative? That was wonderful. We have a producer now sitting in on this. His name is Brennan, and he is watching going, oh, my Lord, Steven is a crazy person. I cannot believe he's like this.
Brennan.
Welcome, producer Brennan, to the party. Let's get back to the football part of this. Is there a game at any point during this year, as we've watched Julian develop, where you would have said, based on where Julian Sand was in that moment, I'd rather have Luke Altmaier than Julian Sand for just that game and that week and what they were that game and that week?
My answer is no, but the only answer I think is Texas. Like if you want to say like, hey, we're just going to hand the ball off a lot, go out there, fly the plane, put it on cruise control, and just sit there in case anything starts bleeping red, and then we'll figure it out, which it never really did for Julian Sand. Like that would have been the game to where you would say, hey, Luke, like take that over. Because like, again, Luke Altmaier, like his QBR is 6th in college football right now. He's thrown for over 1,500 yards. He's got 12 touchdowns, no picks. And granted, he did not have a great game against Indiana. Nobody really did. But he played pretty well against USC. He's been pretty efficient in all their other games. You know, that would be the one. I still think I'm taking Julian Sand, you know, because like, let's say you get into it and it's, you know, like, for example, Texas scores late in that game. You know, it's 14-14. Ohio State has the ball with 4 minutes left, and it's time to go cook. At that point, like, and this is kind of what we've been talking about all year with like Julian Sand kind of cooking with gloves on and kind of having the childproof locks on his doors, where it's like, hey, they haven't been in a position to where they've had to just say, oh God, we got to go win the game, go do it. So in that situation, I would still want Julian, which is why I would take Julian, because I think Julian could do it. But I think that was probably the only game where you're like, maybe just you take the veteran nature of it. You take we're just going to play it simple. We're going to play it, you know, we're going to play it easy, put Altmaier out there. But no, I mean, Altmaier's good, but I don't know what realistic kind of conversation you're having where it's like, oh, I'm definitely taking him over Julian.
For the record, producer Brennan telling us it's Boomer and Sooner. They have 2 mascots. So he'd have a buddy. If they lose on Saturday, they at least have a buddy that they can hang out with.
So do you kidnap Boomer or Sooner or both?
No, you take both. That's the trade-off. You take both. And he just has a partner. You know what that does? Texas now has to find a running mate for their mascot, because if not, he's going to be all alone when he's in captivity.
I like this. I like this a lot.
Yeah, man. Kidnapping mascots. Not the people in them. Not the people in them. Just the suits.
I can come around to that, but I'm still against you on that.
But you still want the people in the suits to just be hanging out.
There's going to be some real consequences to this stuff. My answer, by the way, I think might be the Washington game. I get where you're coming from, Gillis. That was kind of where my brain went first. But I think even if Luke Altmaier was Ohio State's quarterback, I think they would have, at some point in that game, gone a conservative route, knowing that, you know, their defense could do whatever they wanted to do against that Texas offense. The reason I think it's the Washington game is because I think Ohio State was kind of ready to open up its offense, but the hesitation was first start on the road for Julian Sand. I think if they had a veteran quarterback at Washington, I think they would have unleashed it a bit more than they did. So I think that's the only game where the thing is, even if Ohio State had opened up their playbook, I think I would still want Julian Sand. But what I'm saying here is that I think if it was Luke Altmaier, they would have opened up the playbook, as opposed to how conservative they were with Julian Sand at Washington. So that would probably be the only rebuttal to the Texas game. I think in both situations, I'd probably rather have Julian Sand, to be quite honest with you. But I give Luke Altmaier credit. I'm still high on Luke Altmaier. I think the Indiana game, some of it was him, some of it was that O-line just was getting destroyed, and he didn't really have much of a chance. So I'm still high on Luke Altmaier, but I think in both situations, I'd be fine with Julian Sand over him.
Luke Altmaier has completed 73.6% of his passes for 1,573 yards, 12 touchdowns. He hasn't thrown a pick all year. In fact, I don't believe he's thrown a pick at home since he had 4 picks in a game 2 years ago. So he's pretty efficient with the ball as well. He's averaging 10.6 yards per attempt in comparison to Julian Sand. The only place where Julian Sand truly stands out in comparison to Altmaier is the completion percentage, 80.2%, 1,313 passing yards, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 10.4 yards per attempt. So the efficiency stuff is there for both of them. It's just Julian's been otherworldly with his efficiency because he just never misses passes. He also has wide receivers who catch everything outside of Jeremiah Smith's first game, which that's just tradition at this point. Drop a pass or 2 in game 1, and then you never drop another one. And even their PFF grades across the board are pretty efficient as well. Luke Altmaier maybe not as lethal throwing the ball down the field, deep balls, 20 yards or more, because again, Julian Sand, 85.7%. That's just another world that everybody else is living for. But the place where Altmaier stands out is the medium, the 10 to 19 yards. He's 28 of 40 for 554 yards and 5 touchdowns. Julian Sand, in comparison, is 14 of 25 for 210 and 4 touchdowns. Neither has thrown a pick in that area of the field. But as a result, I think Illinois and their slot receivers, and it's why they can move Hank Betty all over the place versus Ohio State's slot receiver, not really that much involved. I agree, though. It's one of those two games where it's you take the guy who's done it before versus throwing the guy out there where you have to have training wheels on them. But I do think outside of those two games, it's either why would we sit Julian Sand against Grambling when we can throw him to the Wolves and see what he does? Same thing with Ohio. And then by the Minnesota game, Julian Sand has turned into what he's turned into here. Any other Illinois things we want to talk about here? Like, do we, again, Ohio State's giving up 2 touchdowns this year so far. Does anybody have Illinois making that 3 or more on Saturday?
What do you mean making that 3?
As in, like, giving up their 3rd touchdown of the season, or 4th, or 5th, or 6th.
Oh, I see. Okay. Guess we'll find out.
I mean, you can say yes without giving away the score.
I'm not going to give away my score right now.
I think potentially. I think this Illinois offense is going to be. I think they might be the toughest test so far for Ohio State. I think this offense might be better than Washington's.
If Illinois wins, is it because it's a shootout or is it because it was a defensive game?
I think they would have to make it a shootout, which is a scary thought. And I don't know if a team can truly win a shootout against Ohio State because I think the defense will get stops eventually. But I think that would be Illinois' only hope. I will say, I was listening to Tom Fornelli earlier this week. I can't remember if it was on their podcast or if he was appearing on another podcast.
The 9 minute that he does every week.
No, I think he was. I think he was on Part of My Take this week. But he was talking about Ohio State's defense and obviously everything that Matt Patricia does. And I think he was like, he's making kids go through like what NFL quarterbacks have to go through. And he was saying that like if there is a quarterback who's maybe equipped to be able to read some of that stuff pre-snap, it's probably the guy who's a third-year starter at a program. So I think there is something to be said about Luke Altmaier is probably more well-equipped to figure out what Ohio State's doing pre-snap than DeMond Williams or Arch Manning or even Drake Lindsey. It's still going to be tough, but I give Illinois' offense maybe more of an advantage than other offenses Ohio State has played simply because they have a veteran quarterback. I think that matters against this defense. Like, I think like if Ohio State was playing Miami tomorrow, I think one thing that would matter is like Carson Beck has played against some really high level defenses and has experience. Like that would matter as opposed to, Trinidad Chambliss for Ole Miss going up against this defense.
There's also an element here, I think, from Ohio State's perspective. They've gone up against Illinois in their scheme defensively before, because if you remember, Ryan Walters was calling the plays defensively at Illinois before he took the job at Purdue. And they just went up against Ryan Walters' defense against Washington. So it's not brand new, but also that means that Luke Altmaier has gone up against the Matt Patricia defensive scheme before because he goes up. It's the same tree. So he's going to have, obviously, Matt Patricia's going to have some things up his sleeve, but there's an element here of all the other quarterbacks have never seen anything like what Matt Patricia's doing on defense. Luke Altmaier, to your point, Stefan, is the first who has seen what Matt Patricia's doing and how does he maybe adapt to that in the way that the others did. Okay, let's take a break and then we'll go ahead, Andrew.
Well, I was going to say, I think to your point, or to Stefan's point, I think there was this common idea that, Ohio State, you have to beat them by taking out a blunt object and swinging the hammer for 60 minutes. And I think there was kind of this idea for a while. I don't know if that's true. Like we brought this up. I think it was after the Ohio game where we talked about, what was the biggest threat to Ohio State, Penn State or Oregon, I think was our video. But I think one of the things that we kind of talked about was Oregon, and Illinois right now ranks 27 in 20-plus yard plays, have 29. In 30-yard plays, they are 29th. They have 14. In 40-yard plays, they are tied for 16th. They have 9. In 50-yard plays, they are tied for 7th. They have 6. So, they are explosive to a degree. And I think Stefan's right. I think you almost have to look at this with a team like Illinois playing a team like Ohio State, where especially in a non-matchup game like this, where it's a little like the NCAA tournament, where you have like a 13 seed playing a 4. You know what the 13 seed's going to try to do? They're going to try to chuck up a bunch of threes and try to hit 40% from deep. And if they hit 40% from deep, they're going to win the game, or at least they're going to put themselves in a position to win the game. And I think if you're a team like Illinois, that's probably the way you approach this, where it's like it's that quote from Miracle where it's like, you don't defend them. And, crossing out the chalk on the board. He's like, you don't defend them, you attack them. And he just like draws the chalk straight across the board. And he goes, you take their game and you shove it right back in their face. I think that's what Illinois kind of has to do. I think, frankly, that's what a lot of other teams have to do. Because if you try to slow play this, Ohio State's going to do that. And their defense is good enough to where all of a sudden they'll win on those margins. You just have to look at it and say, we hit 3 bombs. We hit 3 big plays, 4 big plays on special teams, on defense, on offense. We might have 21 points, and then we got a shot. Well, Illinois is equipped in that idea of long scrimmage plays to where if you think you can break something, they've done it a little bit this year.
They have 14 plays of 30-plus yards. That's tied for 5th in the Big Ten. They have 9 plays of 40 or more yards. That's tied for 3rd in the Big Ten. They have 6 plays of 50-plus yards. That's tied for 2nd in the Big Ten. And they have 3 plays of 60 or more yards. That's tied for that's 2nd in the Big Ten in general, and that's still long. They don't have anything 70 yards or longer. That theory checks out. If you shoot 40+% from 3, you have a chance. The problem is the other team can also shoot 40+ from 3, and that's just where they normally live. But let's take a break here, and then we'll come back and give our picks here on Buckeye Talk.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. 1 order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
Purina believes no one should have to make the impossible choice between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Through the Purple Leash Project, Purina is helping create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
Ohio State is a 14-point favorite in its 3rd Big Ten game of the season and 2nd on the road when they travel to Champaign to play the number 17 Illinois in the number 1, number 17 matchup. These are our game picks. Andrew, we'll start with you. What's your game score for Ohio State versus Illinois?
Ohio State 35, Illinois 10. I think Ohio State kind of rolls in this one, and I think we are going under again. I think Ohio State's idea of what they've done this season is to kind of play it slow. I think they might do that on the road again. I did mention in one of our videos that they might be accidentally explosive. I think this might be one of those things where, you can diagram a bunch of 6-yard outs or a bunch of run plays or whatever. And one of these times, Carnell just might take a slant 60 yards of the house and he might just put you up and you go, we weren't anticipating being up 7-0 this early. We were kind of, being a little more methodical with it. We were being intentional with it, but well, here we are. I just think you might have some of those. I think Illinois, their secondary is just, I don't know, and I don't really see how it matches up to Ohio State's receiving core. Presuming Julian Sand takes care of the football, I think that is how, Ohio State kind of gets into trouble this year, is if Ohio State doesn't take care of the ball, Sand doesn't take care of the ball. But yeah, I think Ohio State rolls. I think maybe this is a game where it's 24-10 in the 3rd quarter, so it's not technically over. If it's 21-7 at halftime, something like that, it's not over, quote unquote. Ohio State's still got a game to play, but I just think over time, especially in these matchups, Illinois is a really solid football team. Illinois is probably going to win like 8 games, 9 games this year. I think they're really solid. It's just Ohio State just long term has that talent, and I think this is going to be one of those games to where you just see that kind of pop up immediately. And even if Ohio State doesn't blow the doors off of them like Indiana did, I think we are going to reach a point to where, Ohio State wins fairly comfortably. So 10, Ohio State covers. I don't think you really have to sweat the cover too much. I do think you probably have to sweat the under a little bit, but I am going under yet again.
So Andrew has Ohio State giving up its 3rd touchdown of the year. Is that in the red zone?
No. Illinois hits a bomb.
Illinois hits a bomb. Somebody messed up in the back end. Ohio State, get it together, man. Stefan, what's your game score?
I've got Ohio State winning this game 42-14. So I think they're going to give up 2 touchdowns. And I think one of those is going to be in the red zone. Terrifying, I know. I think I think Illinois with Luke Altmaier and his experience, I talked about that a bit on our latest episode of Buckeye Talk. I think that has some value against Ohio State's defense as opposed to some of the younger guys that they played this year. But I don't know when those touchdowns are going to come. Maybe they're late in garbage time. Maybe they get one early and make it 7-0 or something like that to surprise people. But I'm not overly impressed with this Illinois defense. I gave Illinois a lot of credit for the way they bounced back from the Indiana game with how they played against USC and how they played against Purdue, and they won those games. Their defense was not impressive in either of those games. And the USC offense is pretty good. Purdue's offense has had moments that they looked okay against Notre Dame earlier this year. But this Ohio State offense is a whole nother beast. And I don't know how this Illinois secondary can slow them down. I will admit, I said something similar going into the Washington game where I was like, I don't know how this Washington secondary can match up. I think I was right. Ohio State just approached the game differently than I thought they were going to. I think that there are no more... It's no longer, guardrails up for Julian saying he has shown you he can win on the road. He has shown you that he can play against Big Ten opponents and against teams like Texas. He has shown that he can do it. I think last week's Minnesota game was, okay, here's a safe environment to test it out in and put a lot on Julian Saint's plate. I think it's full go from here on out. I think it's full go for Ohio State's offense against Illinois and Wisconsin to set up it going into the bye week and then having Penn State on the other side. And then all that leading into the Michigan game, of course. Now it's all engines go for Ohio State's offense. It's time to start putting everything on Julian Saint's plate, regardless of the opponent or the environment or whatever it may be. So, Illinois, I like their offense. I like Luke Altmaier. I think they're maybe the first team to give Ohio State's defense some fits. All that does is lead to 14 points. That's okay. I trust Ohio State to win most points where they limit teams to 14. Most games when they limit teams to 14 points. I don't see how this Illinois defense can do anything against this Ohio State offense. And while I do like Illinois' offense, I don't think they can do nearly enough against this Ohio State defense. So Ohio State rolls 42-14. I'll take Ohio State to cover, and I'll take the over.
So for those of you watching this short game predictions video on YouTube, we just had a whole conversation on the full podcast on Buckeye Talk. Go check that out about what we think it looks like for Illinois to keep this close or even pull off an upset in this game. And Stefan and Andrew both brought up the idea of Illinois being explosive. And I'm pretty positive they're both talking about in the passing game, not then necessarily the run game with Luke Altmaier making some things pop. I agree. The problem is I do not think Illinois is set up to do that in this game because their offensive line is too shaky. And if you're going to ask Luke Altmaier to drop back a bunch of times and try to be explosive, well, explosive plays take time, unless you think that Ohio State's going to forget how to tackle all of a sudden. So long developing plays take time to develop, and I can just see Caden Curry living in the backfield, Kenyatta Jackson, if he plays, living in the backfield, Caden McDowell living in the backfield, Tywan Malone, Will Smith Jr., Edric Houston is starting to look even better. Arvell Reese, hey, that guy who is not going to be here for much longer. Sonny Styles, maybe they send Caleb Downs on some blitzes, but it's just, I don't know if Illinois is equipped to do the thing that they need to do to keep this close or maybe even pull an upset off. While on the other end of that spectrum, Stefan, you're talking about their defense. Illinois is dead last in the Big Ten in passing yards allowed per game, and they're 100 in passing yards allowed per game at 252.3. They're also 7.3 yards per attempt, so that's a little bit lower, so it's more of a overall counting numbers than it is an efficiency number with them. It's somewhere in the middle of them or where they are. Remember back in 2021 when CJ Stroud lit up Michigan State like a Christmas tree? And in hindsight, it was like, oh, yeah, of course he did that. This passing offense is amazing, and Michigan State can't cover anybody. You're right, Stefan. I understand Brian Day keeps saying don't throw out the Indiana game, and that is a mindset, culturistic approach it the right way. We should not be throwing out the Indiana game because Ohio State's receivers are better than Indiana's receivers. They have a quality core. They don't have two dudes who are going to be wide receiver ones in the next 24 months on their team, and a quarterback who is completing 80% of his passes and can layer any throw you want him to layer. And it's unfortunate that Illinois' weaknesses and their deficiencies, there just so happen to be two teams who I think are playoff bound on their schedule, who that's their strength on offense. And so what do you do with that, right? You can't stop the pass. Indiana wants to throw the ball. Ohio State can do whatever it wants when it throws the ball through the air. And so because of that, I don't think they can score touchdowns. I do think they can score field goals, though, and put together some drives like we've seen some other teams too. So I went 42-6, taking the over, and I'm taking Ohio State to cover. And it's not about Illinois being bad. I don't think they are a bad team because they lost. This is a funny sentence. They lost 63-10 against Indiana, and then they lost 42-6 against Ohio State. I do not think they are as bad as the scores and their losses will indicate. They just so happen to be bad in the areas that these elite football teams are God level in. And so it leads to lopsided scores, especially when it feels like they've unlocked Julian Sand. I don't think they're putting that back in Pandora's box anytime soon. So we've got 3 covers, 2 overs, and an under. Andrew has been better in the over-under category significantly than Stefan and I, but we're undefeated in our game picks, and he's 4-1, so it still balances itself out. Those are our game picks for Ohio State, Illinois on Saturday in Champaign. We'll take a quick break here, and then we'll close out with some other games, because this is like a sleeper banger of a week of college football. Who would have thought coming into the season this would be a great week, but here we are. We'll run through some of those games and why they matter to Ohio State after the break here.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
We're back here on Buckeye Talk, closing things out with our game preview pod by looking around the country at some games that matter to Ohio State. Can I ask a question before we deep dive into this? The games are obviously, in terms of what matters to Ohio State, Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, Indiana, and Michigan, USC. Is there another one amongst this list that we're missing?
Of like the big boy games? I don't think so.
Okay. So let's start with Michigan and USC. I don't have the rest of Michigan's schedule up here in front of me, but I can easily pull that up because, you know, the internet. If Michigan wins on Saturday, are they on track for that to be a 10-1 versus potentially 11-0 game on November 29th when Ohio State heads to Ann Arbor, based on what's left on their schedules?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the biggest threats are Washington at home and Maryland on the road.
Right.
And neither of those two teams really terrifies me a ton, especially Washington being at home. I'm not too scared of that. Obviously, we saw last year Michigan struggled when they went to Seattle. But with that game being at home, yeah, if Michigan, this is what I had in the preseason. I had kind of thought that when I picked Michigan to make it to the Big Ten title game, it was because I don't trust Ohio State against Michigan. I don't trust Ryan Day against Michigan yet. And I thought their only loss going into the Ohio State game was going to be at Oklahoma. Like, I think, and the reason I said that was I think Bryce Underwood might struggle in his first road start, but they'll get it going from there. And that's been the case. So we'll see what happens at USC. But yeah, if they beat the Trojans, that's a 10-1 team going into the game.
Who needs this game more, Gillis? Sharon Moore, or Lincoln Riley?
Probably Lincoln Riley, because one, he's been there longer, and two, I mean, we could talk about like Michigan. Like, Michigan will always matter more to Ohio State in any conversation.
Sure.
But like, we laid out Michigan's path. Like, USC is 4-1, and they are coming off a bye week, but they just lost to Illinois on the road in a game where it really, I mean, what, Illinois had like a 50-something yard kick to win it, right? Like, they, or 40-something yard kick to win it. But like, USC was on the brink of 5-0. They play Michigan this week, and then they go to Notre Dame next week, a place they haven't won since 2011. They have a bye week after, I'm looking at their schedule now, they have a bye week after Notre Dame, and then they go to Nebraska. And then they have Iowa on the schedule. They do play them at home, but that's in mid-November. They go to Oregon. Like, we're talking about Lincoln Riley and USC right now. We were like, oh, 4-0, like, we'll see. And now they're 4-1, and they're favored against the top 15 team in the country at home, and blah, blah, blah. This thing can go off the rails quick. It's not hard to envision them losing to Michigan, Notre Dame, and Nebraska. 2 of those games are on the road. And then all of a sudden it's 4-4, and you're like, what the hell just happened? And oh, by the way, you got to play Oregon the second to last week of the year. And you have to go to Oregon. So Lincoln Riley needs this because I think Lincoln Riley might get embarrassed if they lose these two games, because these are the two games that he's kind of been fighting the narrative against for a while, right? That Michigan, what are they going to try to do? They're going to try to run the ball and bully off the field. What does Notre Dame really do really well? I mean, Notre Dame's got a great quarterback this year, but they also run the ball really well. So Notre Dame is going to try to run the ball right at USC. And like, if you get out of that, man, like, what fundamental things would you have, think have changed at USC? So yeah, that's my long-winded way of saying that I think Lincoln Riley needs this win, because then you can, you beat Michigan, you got Notre Dame coming up, and Notre Dame's going to be pissed off for that one, and then you got to go to Nebraska. Nebraska's going to be all hyped up for that. Like, you got to win this one if you're Lincoln Riley. Like, Sharon Moore, you could theoretically lose this game and think to yourself, okay, if we beat Washington at home, and then the next toughest game we play is at Maryland, we can go into the OSU game with 2 losses, and then if we win, we're in the playoff and maybe go into the Big Ten championship game. Lincoln Riley might be screwed if they lose this game to Michigan.
Does he need this game more than James Franklin needed the game against Oregon?
No. I would like to talk about that game right before we end the show, if that's okay. But yes.
He needed that game more than James Franklin needed the game at UCLA.
Yeah, but that's obvious. That's not even, but they're both trying to kill narratives here. Yeah. What game do you want to talk about? You want to talk about the Oregon Penn State game?
I wanted to talk that if Penn State, even if they win, if they struggle against Northwestern, I think you're going to get a pretty good idea of whether that thing is going to go completely kablooey, because they got to play at Kinnick next week, and then they come to Ohio Stadium. That might be real ugly when they come November 1st to Columbus.
I mean, yeah, but is it? I don't know. I don't think my opinion on who I think is going to win that game is changing.
No, but it could be the nail in the coffin for James Franklin.
I already think it's going to be the nail in the coffin for James Franklin.
Could be.
He can't win big games, and he just lost to UCLA. Like, I don't
think they're not getting in at. I don't think they're getting in at 10-2.
Penn State?
They're not.
Oh, if Penn State goes 10-2, they're in.
No, they're not.
They're not going to go 10-2, but they're in, because they would have beaten Ohio State at that point. They would have beaten Ohio State, and they would have beaten Indiana.
Okay, but then you're also comparing them to other 10-2 teams, and they would not be the best 10-2 team left.
Oh yeah, they would be. I think so.
No, I think there's an entire comp.
Better 10-2.
Penn State would have a better resume. They'd have 2. Notre Dame's not going to have a ranked win at the end of the year.
The committee just told you horrible losses matter.
Yeah, but Notre Dame's not going to have a ranked win at the end of the year, and Penn State would. Look,
Notre Dame also doesn't have a loss to a team who had no wins and fired its coaches.
Yeah, so, I'm not saying it was a good loss.
But more importantly, there's an entire conference ran by Greg Sankey.
Mm-hmm. Sure, right.
Who, quite frankly, have a better resume than Penn State's going to have. And this is coming from the person who is having so much fun trolling the SEC. If it comes down to a 10-2 SEC team and a 10-2 Penn State team, the 10-2 SEC team needs to get in. Period.
But then, so I'm just letting you know that Indiana's out at that point. 10-2 Indiana's out against Penn State. 10-2.
Nope.
Because Penn State would have beaten Indiana.
Yeah, but that's not the conversation we're having. Like
so that's not even you left out.
It does, but if the conversation comes down to a 10-2 SEC team in Penn State, please do not put James.
It's all moot because Penn State's going to lose one more time, at least.
Right. So, good job. You beat Northwestern.
I just think
I think there's a better chance Penn State goes 8-4 than goes 10-2.
I agree.
100%. But again, also congratulations, you beat Northwestern. Yeah. Anyway,
listen, turn up your TVs if Penn State goes 3-out in their first possession.
My God. My goodness.
See what that sounds like.
What time is that game at?
It's a good question.
This is great podcasting, by the way.
It's in Happy Valley, and that game kicks off at 3:30 on Fox Sports 1.
Okay, so they're going to beat Northwestern. Obviously, what happened at UCLA. But last week was obviously fluke. It's just coming off the back of you had just lost another top 10 opponent, and this looks worse than it actually was. Obviously, that's a fluke. But it's not a fluke the way Ryan Day is saying Indiana beating Illinois by 53 points is a fluke. It's like a legitimate fluke. If you played that game 100 times, UCLA won the one time that they would win that football game. Indiana, Oregon, Stefan. I don't think you can. Yeah, I saved that for you. I don't think you can make the case that Dan Lanning needs this game more than Kirk Cignetti needs this game, because Dan Lanning has a Big Ten championship to his claim, and also the rest of his schedule maps out in a way that they're going to be a one-loss team. So the difference is if Indiana goes undefeated, runs the table, and Oregon runs the table after this, Indiana is going to be the team that gets the Big Ten championship spot if it comes down to those two. That's where, so from a season standpoint, obviously it's equal, but from a bigger picture program standpoint, it's Kirk Cincinnati still is kind of looking for a signature win, and I think this could be this on the road in Eugene. Is this if assuming Ohio State takes care of business, right, for the rest of this year, is this a preview of who Ohio State will be playing in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I think the winner of this game makes it to Indy, because even if Indiana wins in Oregon and then slips up at Penn State, they're still going to have one Big Ten loss, and they'll have the tiebreaker over Oregon to get in. So I think the winner of this game is probably pretty safe. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't think there's like a necessary like needs to win this game narrative around either coach, right? Like whichever team loses, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think Kurt Cignetti probably needs this game to not be a blowout. Like he needs it to be a battle. If Indiana loses in a fashion at all similar to like how Ohio State lost at Oregon last year, I don't think it. Honestly, it might help. It might help Indiana's case more than it hurts it.
As much as I hate the concept of good loss, that's a good loss.
Yeah, because that's what Indiana's narrative is right now, is that they can't compete with the top 5, top 10 teams, like just from pure talent. Like this is not a James Franklin like can't win the big one for Kurt Cignetti. It's like you don't have the roster to compete with those teams yet. So that's just competing with that is probably what is good for Indiana's resume. Now I would hope Kurt Cignetti is not going into saying, hey, let's just lose close. I don't imagine that's what he's saying. But yeah, I think the winner has a pretty clear path to Indianapolis, where we assume Ohio State will be awaiting on the other side. Kind of interesting how the schedule has fallen, where, last year Ohio State plays both the teams that it thought it could see in Indianapolis. Obviously, Ohio State got in its own way by losing to Michigan. And this year, they don't play either of the teams. Maybe Michigan could end up in that discussion. I guess I did just say that Michigan might only have one Big Ten loss if they were to beat Ohio State. But that, again, is that's Ohio State getting in its own way to stop that matchup. So Ohio State takes care of business. Long story short, I think the winner of this game is probably who they face. And regardless, it's going to be probably a pretty explosive offense.
So who should they be rooting for? And this is not about our own invested interest, because one of us has a degree from there and the other one is a lover of all things.
This is a big weekend. It's a big weekend for me and Gillis. We got Indiana, Oregon, his my alma mater versus another school that he didn't go to that he roots for. And then on Monday it's Commanders versus Bears on Monday Night Football, a little Hail Mary revenge games. Yeah, it's a big weekend for the two of us. I think if you're Ohio State, you're probably rooting for Indiana. I think Ohio State, from 1 to 85 on their roster, still has a significant advantage over Indiana, more so than it would over Oregon. So you probably would rather face Indiana.
Yeah,
I think if Oregon wins and both of these teams are undefeated, there is a chance that the Big Ten championship game is essentially just deciding who's the 1 seed and who's the 2 seed.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
I think that if Indiana beats Oregon, I think in both of them run the table, Indiana losing means it's going to be like the 4 seed.
Yeah, I think because if Indiana were to be undefeated and Miami's also undefeated, I think Miami would still have a better resume. Well, I don't know if they have a better resume, but I think they'd be ranked ahead of it.
I think they'd have a slight better resume. Nothing crazy, but a slight one. But also, more importantly, perception of who are the best teams in the people have already decided that Oregon, Ohio State, and Miami, whatever order you want to put them in, are the 3 best teams in the country. And so that's why I gave the credence. Like, Oregon can afford to lose a Big Ten championship game the way that I am not 100% positive Indiana, even if they're undefeated, could afford to win a Big Ten championship game and still get a bye, which sucks. But that's college football.
This game is a big narrative game, I think, where like Indiana has been awesome these last 2 years, but like Stefan was kind of pointing out, like they got on the field against Ohio State, they went up 7-0, and then I think it became kind of clear at some point right around that second quarter that Indiana kind of tucked tail and not quit. Now, I don't think that was true. We quit or we just tried to keep the game close. No, I think what Indiana's coaches realized is we don't match up to these guys at all. And we need to try to keep this game as short as possible and try to get to the fourth quarter and try to win it. And that was, I think, their goal, right? Like they just wanted to, keep that game close going into the fourth and then try to steal it at the end. And that happened. And then a few weeks later, they played Notre Dame. And I think the same thing was the case where, Indiana, they played that game so conservatively. And I think we were kind of looking after the fact, like, man, Indiana just really did not think they could stack up talent-wise with that Notre Dame team. This is the one where it's like, man, they really need to prove something here. Like, if they lose this game, like the over-under is 55.5 and Oregon's 7.5 point favorites. If Oregon wins this game like 38-14, like the narrative on Indiana is not going to be good. And does that mean Indiana's a bad team? No. Does that mean Indiana's not a playoff team? No, Indiana still should be a playoff team. But frankly, it does kind of make me look at Indiana a little differently in that you are better than everybody but the top 10 in college football. And then you get on the field in top 10 college football, and all of a sudden Kurt Cignetti being like a top 5 coach in the sport doesn't matter anymore because the other teams just got dudes that you do not have. So that to me is a big narrative thing. So I think Indiana, like more than any, like you said, Steven, if Indiana loses this game 31-28 and it's close the whole way, you can, Indiana will not live with it. I will come on this podcast and stand on the table for Indiana and say you should live with it because that's totally okay.
Fun week of college football. Andrew's going to a wedding, so we don't get to pick at him if Indiana beats Oregon this weekend. Yeah, we'll do it through the text. Actually, we might do it through both text. 614-350-3315 if you want to give Andrew a hard time if Indiana beats Oregon, or if you want to give Stefan a hard time if Oregon beats Indiana. Or if you want to give me a hard time. No. Do it throughout the weekend. Do it the entire time.
I'm not reading it on Saturday. I'm busy.
I'll be driving our car back from Champaign on Saturday. So if Indiana loses, I will not see your text.
I'll read them out loud in the car in the passenger seat. 614-350-3315. I have no invested interest in anything this weekend. I went to Kent State and they stink. 614-350-3315. 2-week free trial, $3.99. After that, it's a 2-week free trial. Ohio State, Illinois on Saturday. Stefan and I will be there giving you all news, all analysis, everything you should possibly want as an Ohio State football fan. For Stefan and for Andrew and for our producer, Brennan, I'm Steven Means. Talk to you guys later.